Hello, fellow rejects. Do you feel like you are less than a badass redemptionist in Darktide? Maybe you've grown weary of mashing left click with that knife, or you're just swinging that chainsaw like an unhinged madman. Perhaps the mutants are ruining your day, or you're just a little agoraphobic around the pox hordes. Well, I'm here to tell you a secret that the quartermasters don't want you to know. Okay, so you're probably thinking, well, hey, this is a meta? And you would probably be correct. But in saying that, however, while it may not solve all of your problems with the heretics, it will certainly make you feel like a badass death cult assassin while carrying you through some of the hardest modes in the game. And so, without further ado, let's take a look. So first, let's talk about the choice of weapon. Today we'll be dealing with the Turtolsky VII Heavy Sword. The animation, the combo attacks, even the appearance of this thing screams a 40k version of a katana. Now let's take a look at the stats you want to prioritize. Damage, well, that's a no-brainer. 80% or maybe as close as you can get to that. Cleave damage, again, as close as you can get to 80%, there's no question. First target, well, this is pretty much your primary damage source, so obviously it has a direct impact on the weapon's damage. So once again, close to 80% is possible. Now, the last two is where you kind of have some wiggle room. Cleave target affects the cleave damage distribution towards anything past the first target that the weapon lands on. It doesn't need to be super high, as long as it doesn't go below the 50% mark. Well, anything below 50% will actually debuff your base cleave target amount. Defense is somewhat important as it affects the dodge distance and dodge limit. You definitely do not want the stat to be below 50% as you will be bullied by every pox burster you try to push. I would say ideally keep this thing at least 60%, maybe closer to 70%, unlike the one that I have. In the end, cleave target and defense are pretty fluid. As long as they're above 60%, you should be alright. Now, in terms of the refinements, I personally prefer specialist damage and critical damage, as the heavy attack is apparently, in the quote, largest, hardest hitting attack designed to take out the toughest targets otherwise untouchable. Wow. Now, it just so happens I got lucky and I got a plus 10 crit by pure favor through the Omnissiah, but you can also adjust it to your liking, such as replacing with elite damage or maybe flat damage for those pesky maulers. In practice, the heavy attack is usually able to knock any regular maniacs, pox hordes, and shooters on their ass, with ample time to finish them off by repeating the heavy strike combo. So extra damage on infected and maniacs aren't really necessary, but that's just the way I see it. When it comes to blessings, you have more options. My sword is a little deficient on the cleave target department, so the machine god of course has granted me this delicious level 4 wrap while I picked head taker for that extra damage. Note that it says plus power on hit, meaning that it's 1 stack for every target hit. So potentially you only need 1 swing, light or heavy, to get all 5 stacks of head taker for a total of 40% damage for literally free. Likewise, a 200% cleave from Wrath should make up for that low cleave stat. Now, compare that with something like Rampage and Savage Sweep, both of which require landing attacks on 3 targets to be realized, and the buff given is actually less than Wrath plus Head Taker. I'm not entirely sure about Perfect Strike, as I haven't really experimented with it much, but with the 200% cleave, I doubt hitmass would really be an issue anyways. While Death Blow is probably better for other iterations of the Turtolsky sword, this one is better with just cleave and damage. And now for the good part. So keep in mind, this isn't the only build possible for this weapon, but the one I'm showing you is what's carried me through Maelstrom Heresy and Damnations, so I'm sure something's working. So we are going to start off with the Stain. This will give even more damage to an already very strong weapon. Once again, it's on hit, so you can probably get like all 5 stacks in 1 or 2 sweeps. It's another plus 25 damage for, again, literally no cost. Next, we're going to go down the rightmost branch in order to get the free bleed stacks from Scourge for even more damage. Backstabber is free damage to any bulwarks and probably even crushers. Don't read too literally into the description. It really just means back attacks, and apparently it's actually quite lenient on them too, as even slightly to the side can count as quote-unquote the back. 7 Wind might be a bit of an odd choice to pick, but I will explain later why it makes sense. Coming down the right branch means you will have to take Blades of Faith, which is something I actually like using, as it's useful for yoinking anything that's slightly out of your melee range, but maybe you're also carrying a slow gun to swap to, like a bolter or a flamer. Furthermore, these are apparently magical throwing knives because they inherit bonuses from your melee weapon, as well as contributing to building blessing stacks too. You will of course have to get good at using the throwing knives, but once you learn how to utilize them, you will not live in fear of being kidnapped by trappers ever again. Now from here, I like to pick these little intermediate ticks all the way to the left branch for that extra damage and movement speed. Then I definitely want to take Until Death and Holy Revenant. These are just about mandatory for survival on the harder Auric and Maelstrom modes. When Until Death kicks in, you want to jump into a horde and mash that light attack into that horde to deal the most damage possible to heal the maximum amount of HP that you can. And then we actually want to stop there and continue down that left branch with Thy Wrath Be Swift, meaning your strikes can't be cancelled even when surrounded by a horde of angry mobs. And then that extra stagger for that much desired crowd control is always welcome, of course. So seeing as this is a kind of a survival oriented build, we will be taking Loner for that free toughness regen in the very likely case that the rest of your team gets sent to horny jail. Yeah. When it comes to ability, this part is kinda up to you. I prefer the stealth because it's a very useful button. Maybe you've attracted a band of crushers, or you are caught in a Mexican shootout with bulwarks and snipers. This has not just saved me, but the entire mission more times than I can count. So I go for the extra duration over the extra damage plus cooldown, because we're mainly using it for survival, as the sword already has plenty of damage by itself. Next, you definitely want to take a quick detour down the middle branch for that increase in melee attack speed. It translates to getting blessing stacks faster, dishing out those staggers more often, and you also get the increased DPS. Ultimately, this is kind of a speed-focused melee build, so you definitely want to go for that momentum keystone. Highest throw cut will help you get your stealth back much sooner. You'd want to take Swift Certainty, and what this does is you are considered to be dodging when you are sprinting, even at 0 stamina, right? No more will you have to put up with suddenly being smacked in the back of the head while sprinting, And if you sprint about a 60-degree or higher angle towards any oncoming fire, you will be able to dodge the bullets too, even at 0 stam. And because this counts as a quote-unquote successful dodge, it will actually trigger any passives, such as Second Wind, that requires a dodge to proc. And because bullets only damage your toughness, you will literally be dancing around unkillable by gunners and reapers, and you'll also be able to move faster too. Yeah, this skill is what's gonna turn you into a space ninja, trust me. Finally, the momentum keystone will both give you speed and allow you to deliver a powerful strike at max stacks towards any priority target. And the best part is it also affects your throwing knives too. For the modifier, you want to get the extra toughness regen, as this translates to literally sprinting in a circle to get free toughness. Inebriate pose, once again, it'll proc as a result of you running around and dodging bullets. So it's just getting those momentum stacks faster, which means faster toughness regen, etc. So this weapon's special attack is apparently a one-click diagonal sweep. It's AoE, it staggers, it decapitates, it's got crazy reach. It doesn't reduce your speed nor stop your momentum, and it comes out almost instantly. So you will be using this a lot.
A lot.
I personally bind the special attack button to Q because I use a generic Logitech mouse. So because the special attack has a downwards trajectory, you always want to jump into using it, as that will usually result in a head strike. For single targets, the combo you want to use is special, side heavy, and overhead heavy, while dodging in between as needed. I highly recommend you get used to jumping while executing the special, as well as the overhead slash, as that will give you the highest chance to hit the target's head and split their skull. For hordes, you want to cut out that second heavy, and it'll just be special and side heavy. By itself, this combo can be used for single targets if you're in a pinch, especially for those big hordes. You definitely want to conserve your dodges as much as possible by moving backwards when executing the special attack to kind of take advantage of the reach, while moving forwards while using the side heavy to sweep as many enemies as possible. The special will stagger them, while the heavy attack knocks them on their asses. Oh, you see a flamer or trapper headed for you? A knife in the eye should do it. It takes a bit of practice with predicting the knife drop, but you should push yourself to do it more and you'll get it eventually. Got a mutant posse? Well, give him a good slap with your sword. For some reason, the first heavy is probably guided by the Emperor or something, as it has a high chance to hit them straight in the teeth. And if that hit is a critical, it should one-shot them even on damnation difficulty. Oh no, who let the dogs out? Well, don't worry. Find any obstacle like a door or crates, and you mash that light attack while praying to the God Emperor. Or, hit F and make other people take the fall. And then proceed to beat their saviors. Got a band of crushers and bulwarks? Well, that's what teammates and guns are for. Seriously though, bulwarks are easy enough to deal with when you side dodge followed by a few combos, but crushers are best dealt with at range, as they do have that possibility to one-hit you, and this sword isn't great for damaging carapace armor. One-on-one, you can easily strafe behind a bulwark or a crusher, but in a group, it's just far too risky to be fighting them up close. What's that music? A boss? Well, if it's a pupper of Nurgle, you probably just want to stay away so as to not accidentally fall into Chaos War fetishism. But really, I recommend just using your gun to deal with this guy, as being up close to it can actually deal corruption damage to you, on top of knocking you all over the place. For Plague Ogrins and Chaos Spawns, you want to purposely whip a light attack as you approach, followed by holding the heavy attack, the heavy overhead attack, while you jump and aim it at their face. Always dodge to their right side, as both bosses have a long reach with their arm attacks, especially with a Chaos Spawn's grab. If you really must engage a Nurgle pupper with melee, I recommend waiting until it goes after someone else, while you sneak behind and apply the bonsai cut to his back. Try to look around for anywhere to climb that will give you some form of an elevation that will help you hit the weak spot. You'll always want to back dodge as soon as the bonsai cut lands to prevent being hit by its tail. And if your toughness gets knocked out, that's right, hit that F and it's someone else's problem now. Before we end, we're just going to look at some strategies for combat. Let's start with number 1. If you have a Pox fan club approaching, ideally you want to find a doorway that's about 1 or 2 human avatars wide. You want to stand against the right side adjacent wall as they approach, and you want to prepare that heavy attack while in cover and walk left and release. As soon as you release, hit your special attack and move right back into cover as the special executes. You should dodge only when you hear the audio cue indicating something's about to smack you upside the head, or if a trapper is headed your way. But otherwise, this is practically my go-to strategy for soloing hordes in general with melee, while mostly avoiding the suppressors. You do not want to be out of dodges while surrounded. Number 2. Enemies will flank you. It helps to rotate from one doorway to another if you find enemies approaching you from behind, just to kind of reset the situation. If for whatever reason you feel overwhelmed, then simply mash light attack while dashing away. Number 3. Use barrels whenever possible to help thin out hordes or knock down heavy armor heretics to get some free hits on them. Maybe I'll make a video later on how to actually utilize barrels, as, well, most folks seem to think they don't exist until they do. Well, that's pretty much it for this video. Hope you enjoyed being a space ninja in the grim darkness of the far future, and if you like what you see, make sure you sub for the sub gods and check out my Twitch. I stream Darktide and other React content. Once again, this is Vesper, and I am always in your system.